With the recent government announcement regarding Plus and Prime BTO, the MOP for HDB flats under those projects will be set at 10 years. This is double the time than the standard 5-year MOP that we are familiar with. So you might be wondering, is there a way to sell your HDB flat before MOP ends? In this video, I'm going to discuss what is the process of requesting an exception to the HDB and what are the special conditions that usually get approved. If for certain reasons you want to sell your HDB before MOP, you can appeal to HDB by using e-form on their website. The decision will be fully up to HDB and they will review case by case. So it's very important for you to share any relevant documents that can support your application. And according to those who have tried to apply an exception, the review time can take 6 months to 1 year. So you need to consider whether you still want to try to get an exception or just wait it out until the MOP has ended. And do note that selling your HDB before MOP doesn't necessarily mean that you are allowed to sell in the open market. There are situations where you need to sell back the flat to HDB, which means that most likely you cannot count on gaining a profit. In general, here are some of the situations that typically get excused. Number 1 is divorce. This tends to form the majority of the reasons for needing to sell the flat before the MOP. Both you and your spouse will be allowed to sell the house and then divide the proceeds. Or alternatively, one spouse can take over the other spouse's half, assuming they are able to meet all of the criteria. You can contact HDB using the e-form and share your divorce documents. But note that getting a divorce in Singapore is not that easy. In general, you and your spouse need to be married for at least 3 years. You cannot file for a divorce if you and your spouse have been married for less than 3 years unless leave of court permissions is obtained to do so. And the legal proceedings to settle your divorce can range from 4 months to over a year depending on whether you and your ex can reach an agreement on things such as children's care arrangements, if applicable, maintenance, and the divisions of matrimonial assets. So, if you have a 5-year MOP and it will take at least 3.5 years to get divorce end to end, your MOP might already end sooner than your divorce settlement. But if you have a 10-year MOP, then I guess your divorce most likely can be finalized earlier. While we are talking about divorce, I read online that there are couples who intentionally got a divorce on paper so that one spouse can take over the HDB while the other spouse bought another HDB resale flat as widowed single. And then even though they are divorced, they still live under one roof and just rent out the other flat for income. Personally, I think this is playing with fire and I would not recommend this path. Why? Because of what we can learn from the whole 99 to 1 ABSD saga, a fake divorce can be interpreted as tax avoidance or intentionally cheating the law. You know what? Although rental money is a sweet passive income, but it's not worth going to prison for. Okay, back to situations that typically can be an acceptable reason to sell your flat before MOP. Number 2 is the inability to pay your home loan. This is typically in cases where the sole breadwinner of the family is unable to earn money due to death or disability, and HDB may sometimes allow families to sell their flat prematurely. Number 3 is bankruptcy. If you can prove that you will be bankrupt unless you sell your flat, HDB might allow you to do so. If none of the HDB flat owners are Singapore citizens, then they are required to obtain the consent of the official assignee before they can sell the flat. If any of the flat owners are Singapore citizens, the consent of the official assignee is not required. Number 4 is a terminal illness. This will be evaluated on case-by-case basis, and obviously, you will need to provide your medical records and statement letter from your doctor. Number 5 is the loss or renouncement of citizenship. For example, if you are planning to move abroad permanently, HDB may give their permission for you to sell your house earlier. You'll also be able to get your CPF money back. So those are the 5 typical conditions that are typically excusable. However, when I was house hunting for a resale HDB flat a few years ago, during viewing, one of the sellers said that they had gotten approval from HDB to sell their house before MOP because they wanted to stay nearer to their parents to take care of them and because their BTO is far from their workplace. I can't verify whether they are telling the truth or not, but if you are in such a situation, you can try to appeal to HDB. I mean, there's no harm in trying. Someone asked whether moving house due to kids' schooling can be a good reason to get an exception from HDB. I think it depends. If you have a special needs child that needs to go to a special education school, you might have a case because there's a limited number of SPED schools across Singapore and commuting with a disabled child will be a challenge. But if your child is stereotypical aka normal and you simply want them to go to a specific school that you think is better than the rest, I think it's going to be difficult. They might just say to you that every school is a good school. What if you have an extremely annoying neighbor? Can it be an acceptable reason to sell your flat before MOP? If I had to bet on it, I would say no. Because if HDB allows somebody to get an exception because they claim they don't get along with their neighbor, then another 1,000 couples might claim the same. And that defeats the purpose of having MOP in the first place if it's way too easy to get an exception. Another tip that I got from online forums is that you can try to contact your MP so your appeal case to HDB is stronger. But again, at the end of the day, it's HDB's decision and it's really case by case. So what can't you do before MOP is up? Number one, obviously, you can't resell your flat in the open market unless you got the exception from HDB. Number two, you cannot rent out the whole flat, and forget about the old strategy of locking one bedroom and pretending that you live there while you rent out other individual bedrooms. Although this method is quite famous on paper, this is actually illegal and you can get a very hefty penalty or even can get your flat confiscated if HDB finds out. Note that for Plus and Prime HDB projects, you won't be able to rent out the whole flat even after you have finished your MOP. Only standard HDB can be fully rented out after MOP. You are also not allowed to purchase any form of private property as long as you are still within your HDB MOP. If you are wondering how to check your exact MOP date, then you can check on the HDB website. Simply log in to my HDB page with your SingPass. On the left panel, select My Flat, then click again Purchase Flat, then on the main panel, select MOP. You will be able to see whether you are still under MOP or not. But if you want to know the exact date of your MOP ending, you can fill up an e-form to check your occupation period. Note that the HDB MOP starts from the day you collect your keys and doesn't include any period when you are not residing in the flat. For example, if you have lived in your flat for 4 years, but then you spend a year living overseas, you will be still a year short of the MOP when you return. You need to live in your flat for another year before you can rent or sell your flat or buy another private property. The duration of MOP depends on how you purchase your flat, the flat type, and the date you applied for the flat. Based on the new framework announced by the government, standard BTO flats will continue to have a 5-year MOP, while Plus and Premium BTO projects will have a 10-year MOP. For search projects, the MOP for search flat before 7 April 2022 will either be 7 years from the date of selection or 5 years from the date of key collection. Interestingly, the framework about standard, Plus and Prime BTO projects will only come into effect for new BTO projects launched in the second half of 2024 onwards. There's no change to the current HDB flats and existing BTO projects, and those flats MOP is still 5 years. If you are keen to know more about the new HDB framework regarding the Plus, Prime, and Standard BTO projects, click the link on the description down below as I have discussed it on a separate video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye bye!